Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Up next on the Another View Roundtable, reaction to President Biden's State of the Union address, what must be done about policing people of color, and who should decide what our children learn about each other's culture and race. Dr. Alvean Lyons, Daun Hester, and Gaylene Kanoyton are at the table, and we want to hear from you too. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Another View is next, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. So before we get started with the roundtable, I have to tell you about a couple things that are happening around town. In the city of Norfolk, Ignite 2023. Enjoy networking with neighbors, hot hors d'oeuvres, or maybe cold hors d'oeuvres, who knows, it says hors d'oeuvres, and engage in an inspiring community conversation with special guest Rich Harwood, who is the author and founder of the Harwood Institute for Public Innovation. Now, this is the Healing and Hope National Speaking Tour, and what they're talking about is building better neighborhoods. The event is going to be held on Thursday, February 23rd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Slover Library downtown. It is free. It is open to everyone, so come on down. You can check out nbnacademy.eventbrite.com to find out more information. Also want to remind you that next Thursday, we will be live in Edenton, North Carolina, where we're going to be talking with the townsfolk about the controversies surrounding moving the one and only Confederate statue that they have in town. Some people say the fact that it is located right across from the town council and the visitor center sends a message that certain people are not welcome in Edenton. Others say this is our heritage and we want it to stay. As a matter of fact, they've even filed a lawsuit. So it's going to be a great conversation. If you'd like to be a part of our live studio audience, go to whro.org/events and register. The seating is limited because the venue's not that large. So if you want to go, today is the day to sign up. whro.org/events. And finally, some information about programming on WHRV on Fridays for the month of February. There's a special emphasis on Black History programming. And I want to tell you about a show that's coming on tomorrow. It's called Black Enough. And whether it's the way we talk, the music we hear, or the clothes we wear, many Black people at some point were made to feel not Black enough, including the two people from the Stoop podcast. Layla talks about what it meant to be told she talks white, which I can certainly relate to. And then one of the other guests goes into how she tries to figure out how not to get called out by, she does everything Black because she doesn't want to be called out. And then finally, W. Kamau Bell talks about feeling awkward in Black circles and in front of Black audiences. So that would be an interesting conversation. Join in tomorrow at noon. Thank you for joining us today at noon and my Another View Roundtable. Dr. Alvean Lyons, she's our resident relationship expert, and you can find out more about her at alveanlyons.com. Hey there.
Good afternoon to my people.
Daun Hester is a former educator, vice mayor, city council person, and now is the treasurer of the city of Norfolk. Hey, Daun.
Hello, everybody.
Always willing to stimulate the minds of her college students. Carol Pretlow is a political science professor with Norfolk State University. Hey there, Carol.
Hello there.
So glad that you're here. And if it's about the community, you will find her in the middle of it. Gaylene Kanoyton is a political consultant. She's the founder of Celebrate Healthcare and president of the Hampton chapter of the NAACP. We call her the connector. Hey,
Let's finish the job.
Let's finish the job.
Yes.
Now, speaking of that, great segue into our first topic today, ladies. President Biden delivered his State of the Union address this week. He says, quote, because the soul of the nation is strong, because the backbone of this nation is strong, because the people of this nation are strong, the State of the Union is strong. But there were some moments during the State of the Union. So just want to get you all's reactions, your thoughts about what you heard. And, let's mix it up today. Let's start with you, Carol.
Oh, wow. Well, I know the moment you were talking about when the lady who shall remain nameless, the one with the fur coat and everything. And I was like, okay, girlfriend. The first line of defense is always to act with class. You have the responsibility, this is my mom saying, to act with class even when others do not. So you don't have to agree with him, but do respect the fact that he is president of the United States. And at this point, you're just a minor figure.
So Carol obviously is talking about the reaction of Marjorie Taylor Greene during the speech. Gaylene, what do you think?
Well, for those of us that's old enough to know about Muhammad Ali, you know about the rope-a-dope. I thought that his speech was brilliant. I think he hit the right notes. Of course, he could have done a little bit more. You're always going to have to say that. But I can say that he hit the right notes in terms of when he talked about Social Security and Medicare, how he did that. That was masterful. It was masterful. And he hit the right notes in terms of, with the economy, junk. Let me tell you something. Even some of my friends on the other side, they were like, he hit the right note when he talked about the junk fees.
Yeah.
Nobody ever really talk about the junk fees. You talk about those calls you get on the phone or whatever, robocalls, but the junk fees, he honed in on, which is impactful to many Americans. So I thought he hit the right notes on a lot of, I think he was very cordial and very deliberate and intentional in his speech.
Dawn?
Ditto. Yes, I thought he did a great job. And I did admire his stance that he took with the other side, the ones who were not appropriate, because that is my opinion, that they were just not appropriate. And but yeah, he did a very good job, and I would vote for him again. I don't care if he is 80.
Okay, all right, Ms. Alvean.
So I agree that I think that we generally have underestimated his capabilities because we are a bit of an ageist society. Okay, if we're just going to be honest about it. So there's a standard that we paint, and if you're outside of that, for some reason we delegitimize you in some way. So I thought that it was really beautiful to see his strength and his clarity. Someone may say, oh, but he was reading from a monitor. With all of the ad libs, clearly he was in the moment.
Joke.
Okay,
that's joke.
So I was very pleased for such a strong representation of who he is still as a man. What I thought was very well done was a thread that America has struggled to be able to, or I should say, a needle that America has really struggled to thread, and that is between accountability from a law enforcement standpoint and humanity.
Yeah,
that we've never been saying as a Black community that we don't want law enforcement. What we've been saying as a Black community is while you enforce the law, lets you never forget our humanity inside of the process.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So this false argument that has been created as if Black America and white America are on two different sides of the coins in terms of how safe we want our neighborhoods to be and whether or not we believe in the law is absolute fraudulence. That is not true at all. Those are sound bites and clickbait. We want more than anything to have safe communities, no matter who we are. But to understand that you can both want these safe communities and expect your officers to conduct themselves the way that you would expect your civilians to, I thought that was it. That needle was thread very well. That didn't exclude either. It didn't demonize either, but it held both entities accountable.
You know, I thought it was interesting too. I was watching as the president was describing not ever having to have the talk with his children.
Oh, that was picked up everywhere.
that was that was powerful.
And the look on Vice President Harris's face as he went. I mean, you felt it in your bones when you felt the pain. You know, because all of us at this table have had to have the talk.
And give the talk.
Absolutely. You know, so we know at a very visceral level what that means.
And
That
it's
was
not just with
huge.
our Black sons.
the
We
big-
have that talk with our daughters also.
Oh, absolutely. We have
so
to.
it is across the board.
Right.
There's an impression that it's only with our boys that we have that conversation, but
No.
that's not true.
No.
I even learned something new because I had forgotten about turn on the overhead light.
Yeah, your interior lights.
Yeah, because I was so focused on the 10
10
and
and
2,
2.
10 and 2 and so forth. 10 and 2 meaning hold your hands at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Where the officers can see both of
where they
them.
can see both hands.
You know,
Yeah.
one of the things that they said was, some of the critics have said because having Tyree Nichols' parents there was like a commercial. But that was really impactful.
I didn't think so at all.
Yeah,
I didn't think so at all. It was
either.
impactful, and one thing, the mother, if you've watched her and you watched what she was saying, please do. I mean, she really was reaching out with her body language,
And her faces.
But the way that he
eyes.
had them all stand up and clap and then throw in, we got to, we have to go ahead and pass this George Floyd act. I mean, I thought that was very good too. I mean, I think it's going to be some really good sound bites afterwards to really show the impact of that.
Well, I mean,
Union.
and Dawn, you can speak to this, but it also goes to the humanity of making this whole idea of policing people of color in particular human, because to see that mother there gave it a different perspective.
Yes, it did. And having all the other families that have been impacted.
The gentleman who
Right.
took the gun
Right.
from
Yeah.
the
Right.
folks in
California.
Yeah.
Right. It's we're all human. We just have different colors.
That's right.
You know, and so we have to continue to press that point home. And as people of color, we still got the light skin, dark skin, all that kind of stuff that's going to be part of the conversation.
Coffee cream, coffee
it is
cream.
what it is. Coffee to cream, whatever it is. And thank you very much. But we're all humans. And even if we are making a mistake, we don't deserve to be beat down. We don't deserve to be shot. Period. We deserve to be able to come home, or we deserve to be able to get in the ambulance or the car, and you take me where we need to go for the next stage.
So the thought of there's been a lot of talk about the fact that the officers involved are Black.
Yes.
And to me, it turned to the whole picture of or point of the culture of policing. In terms of who's going to do what. So before, the conversation was always white cops against Black people, and
it's
so
culture.
forth. But it's more. Go ahead, speak to that, Gaylene.
It is more culture because it was before. It was like the white policemen killing Black men, whatever. It was, we saw that.
Or
but
Black
now,
women.
Yeah, or Black women. But now you see it is a culture, and if you talk to any law enforcement person, like I talked to my police chief, he'll tell you, it's a culture in certain areas. For example, we have a great police chief in Hampton. I got to say that. We really do. He does not allow any police officers to chase to chase people through the city or anything like that. And that's not everywhere. But when the dialogue changed for it being black officers that actually killed this black male, it had become the culture. Now let me tell you something else that really got me when Biden said police officers deserve the right to come home safely, just like everyone else does, or whatever, like your children or whatever. I thought that was a powerful line.
Alvin, I know you worked.
I do.
I'll come to you in a minute.
I spent a lot of time in law enforcement, and I get to work with DCJS and on some very challenging cases. And I will say that I'm able to kind of have two experiences. You know, when I'm doing the work, a lot of times I have to just do the work, right? And we're just looking at the facts. But the reality is that it's very hard to look at the facts without having feelings associated with those facts. And I will say, and people can feel however they want to feel about this, that probably if most of the cases that I have watched, this one sickened me more than most of them. And part of the reason it sickened me more was because we have fought so hard to even get on the police force. And so many individuals, good cops across the nation, good cops that happen to be people of color, got into policing in order to have the kind of law enforcement that they wished they could have in their communities. And then to take this opportunity to be everything but what we deserved really broke my heart. I have to be honest with you. I just wanted more. And I understand that there is anything you go into has a culture, be it church, be it education, be it social services, be it politics, everything has a culture. But what I don't excuse is the history that we have all experienced as people of color, that you can get behind that badge and forget. That I do not excuse. I understand that some of our brothers and sisters who are not people of color have never walked in our shoes. So they don't carry that mantle from an emotional level. But there is not a person of color who's not experienced what it means to be a person of color in America. And you are finally in a position of power. And you choose to act demonic in your power. I was disgusted. Against you. I was disgusted.
Well, I felt like you did. And the irony is that when I have seen black cops and white cops, I feel a measure of safety and security. Even in downtown Norfolk, when I see black cops, I feel like, okay, this person has my back. They know that I'm not loitering, that I'm walking. And so when I looked at the film the other night, I cried, because I was like, how could a black person do this to another black person? It really, and my mind went back to, like I've told you all several times, back when I was a child and my parents were having to talk with me about how to respect police officers. And I was like, what you talking about? You don't know. I didn't think my parents knew what they were talking about, because I thought I was smarter than they were. But
most young people do.
I was going to say that's universal.
When I looked at that film and saw these black police officers and beating on this, to me, child, I was devastated. And I was also devastated that I looked at their facial expressions and there was nothing but, and I was like, this can't be. This isn't us.
What can we do?
So
to,
let me just, I have to say this.
Okay.
I have to say this. I haven't watched it. I can't watch it.
I haven't. I couldn't watch the whole thing.
I
couldn't watch the whole thing.
I couldn't. I have a son, and I just couldn't watch it. So we had a rally that Sunday at City Hall, and we had about maybe 50 people that came up. The game was on, some people was at home. But anyway, but one of the things that was brought, and I had all the young people to speak, because I felt like they needed a space. Well, they told me they needed a space to come out and speak. But one of the things that we were pushing, the importance of passing the George Floyd Policing Act, right? And you have folks who say, and Congressman Scott was there, and you have folks that were saying, we don't need politicians. We don't need this. People need to understand, when you talk about what we can do, the reason why we have systemic racism, the reason why we have inequities in our social determinants of health is because of laws that was being made and who we put in office. That's where it all starts at. It starts with the laws. The laws are the ones that box us in. They cause, and then it filters down to, to the community. And so I will try to explain to them, that's why it's important we're telling folks you need to vote. As in the ACP, we advocate for legislation. That's what we do, right? And it starts with you going to the polls and understand why you need to vote and who you need to vote for that agrees with your agenda. And that's where it starts. We would not be in the situation we were in right now if it was not for the laws. Think about it.
Laws are put in place to control.
Exactly.
So
Yes,
the thing
no,
that
no.
and see the thing that I struggle with is the fact that people choose one or the other.
Yeah.
When in fact both have to exist.
Exactly.
Right? Because if I want to harm you, no law is going to stop me from harming you.
Right.
But what that law does is to ensure that you are held accountable if you decide to commit a crime, right? If you behave or conduct yourself in such a way that violates someone else's personhood, there need to be laws to ensure that there is equal justice where that is concerned. But those laws do not abdicate the responsibility of the individual for how I choose to treat Dawn or Gaylene or Carol. I am responsible for what I choose to do. The law is responsible for holding me accountable for whatever that act is. So it's not an either or equation. Either we're only concentrated on what we're doing here or what happens there. We have to own both of those, particularly as a community of color.
And that, to me, goes to what we see in our country. So we have this side that is saying, we call it a culture war. We talk about CRT. We now can't teach Black history anywhere. Some places, Virginia,
We're
Florida.
gonna talk about that in a minute.
I know we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, but I hear
But
what
that's
you're saying.
that's the conversation that keeps some people, many people, from focusing on the fact that we do have to pay attention to who we vote and put in office because of that. And
That's
so
right.
if this voice is louder and more forceful, I'm going to hear that voice than the voice of those of us who are saying, this is why you have to vote, because this law impacts this or this law impacts that.
That's exactly
We're
right.
we're not as loud. We need to be just as loud as they are and pushing back on wokeism, whatever that is, to say that's just a distraction.
Right.
When I say they, people who do not want people of color to participate in anything.
And that's a specific demographic.
Right.
Right.
It's not a
In
blanket.
anything. It's not
And
everybody.
at the same time, when I say the laws box us in, the laws impact our lives to create some behaviors. That's what I'm saying when I say that. Because that you talk about mental illness and everything else because of systemic racism. Okay.
Right.
Let's talk to Mary in Smithfield. Hi, Mary. You're on the air. Yes. Mary, you're on the air.
Hello, thank you.
What's your question?
Well, my comment is I have 4 adopted children. My youngest daughter is African American. I also have 1 Hispanic daughter and 2 Caucasian sons. And my eyes have been opened so much since adopting my youngest daughter. I continually experience prejudice when I have her with me as opposed to my Caucasian children. And I just, honestly, it's hard for me to even believe the difference in the treatment just because of having my African American daughter with me as opposed to my Caucasian or even my Hispanic daughter with me.
Can you give us an
when we go to
example,
public
Mary?
places.
Yeah, can you give us an example?
Well, this is a great example. We were at a amusement park about 2 summers ago. I actually I had my youngest daughter with me, who's African American, and what happened was I had put a shirt on her stroller, and I was kind of looking at other merchandise, and she just playfully pushed the stroller outside of the store, still in the amusement park. Security was immediately called. I was arrested. I was arrested and humiliated, taken back, asked how many baby daddies I have, things like that by the security. And in a similar situation, one of my Caucasian sons several years ago, as kids sometimes do, we walk out of the store, he grabbed a piece of candy from the, checkout. I didn't notice. We get outside. Somebody, came out, but they were very gracious and said, it happens, kind of laughed it off. Nothing happened. And it's just a continual disparity in treatment.
Mary, thank you so much for the call. First of all, we're sorry that has happened to you. But everybody at the table, I think it's fair to say, has experienced something similar. So thank you for sharing.
I want to thank her for having a heart to open up her home.
Yes.
Because so many babies need a home and someone who loves them. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And love has no color.
Exactly.
Love has no color. If you're just joining us, we're mixing it up with the Another View Roundtable. Relationship expert Dr. Alvean Lyons, Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester, political science professor Carol Pretlow, and political consultant Gaylene Kanoyton. Ladies, let's move on to another topic. It's Black History Month. Did you know? Because depending on what state you live in, you may or may not. That is Black History Month. So teachers,
which is American history.
Exactly.
Yes. Teachers in states that have banned teaching divisive concepts, i.e. Black history, have altered their lesson plans. Florida, Texas, Arkansas are the states getting the most attention, but there are many others. In fact, in Arkansas, there's even controversy over teaching about the Little Rock Nine, the 9 Black students who integrated schools there. Even in Virginia, there's controversy over the draft of the new state history standards, with critics saying new standards reframe race relations and whitewashes history. So what are people afraid of? What is the deal? I mean, can you imagine us not teaching the Norfolk 17?
No. I can't imagine not teaching anything about history.
History is...
Well, you're educators here, right?
Yeah.
So...
That's why I'm going to the educators first.
I'm putting this question to you. So when the slaves arrived, they were what? They couldn't read or write, right? It was against the law to read or write, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, I rest my case. Y'all can go ahead and finish.
Well, what I find strange is from the time I was a child, history was always taught to me as comprehensive. You don't cherry pick and say, oh, this is appropriate and that is not, but it is always comprehensive and interdisciplinary. And you can't get that if you're going to say, okay, we're not going to talk about Native Americans, we're not going to talk about Hispanic people, we're just going to talk about this little section. That's not what American history is.
And you grew up, when you were in elementary and middle and high school, you were in segregated schools at that time? Okay, so you were taught a more comprehensive history there?
Well, not by the books, but I was fortunate, and please don't think this is racist, but I was fortunate that I had Black teachers. And ultimately, I found out that most of those teachers had master's degrees and couldn't find jobs anywhere, but they would, particularly my teacher in 4th grade, would look at the book and she said, okay, this is what's happening, but this is a Black experience. At that time, we were called colored people. Until I asked, what color? Orange, red, green, what you talking about? But the teachers added on, even though the books were very, very divisive. The teachers, the parents, and even the ministers in my church did the same thing in terms of religion and Christianity and how we became a part of that.
So and my beginning was segregated too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, we just had all had Black teachers. So my elementary beginning through 4th grade was segregated.
But you both make a really good point. The idea of how, as a community, we need to take back our ability to teach our children about our history. I mean, because you just said, Carol, your teachers added to what was in the school book because it wasn't in the history book.
No, it wasn't in the books then.
It wasn't in the history books
but they knew to put it in with the history. Right. So this was also happening.
The history book that I remember this from 4th grade, there were pages torn out of the book because we got the books from the white school. And they tore pages out, and my teacher would say, okay, there's a gap here. This is what we're going to talk about. And she would provide the gap information. And so would my parents, and their friends would say, this is what happened and why.
Teaching is so different today. And so teachers are pulling information because books are so really not relevant. I'm not going to say not relevant. That wasn't good. But to be
They
current.
can't keep up.
Right,
with
to be
what's been happening.
current with what is going on, you have to pull in other sources and resources. And so why other small group of people, I want to know what they fear that their children will learn that will cause them harm. Because if you learn truth, to me it makes you stronger and better, and you can relate to more people. Even if the history is challenging, because it is challenging. But it was not just challenging for slaves, black people, blah, 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 blah. It was for Hispanics. It was for even some whites that came over. So why
Native
don't you just learn the
Americans,
history? Because we want your brain to be strong enough to be able to synthesize.
And
It's power.
grow.
It's power.
So the thing that I find so interesting about this is that the people who are championing the getting rid of this, the anti-wokeness element of our America, would be the first people to say that we are America strong, that we are the best in the nation, we're the best in the world. Okay, so the thing that I don't understand is that if we're not, are we so fragile that we can't handle honesty? Because to me, that's in contradiction with what you're telling me. You're telling me America first. You're telling me America's strength. You're telling me America's exceptionalism. Well, then what that means to me is that no matter what Americans endure, we can bounce back. So, but then simultaneously, you're telling me, but we can't talk about this, and we have to tiptoe around this, and we have to avoid that, which is hypocritical to your patriotism about the strength of the country that you are so proud of. So to me, as a true patriot of America, that means that I can love my country in all of its truth, not its calculated, faux real, curated Instagram version of what America is,
Instagram.
but the actual America. I can know all of this and still love my country. Stop assuming that we are too weak as Americans to know the truth and still love our country.
And what happens from a societal standpoint, Gaylene, when you erase or try to erase an entire population? I mean, that's what happened with Native Americans. Most people know very little about Native American history in terms of the contributions and so forth.
They become null and void. You don't have to fund them. I mean, everything goes back to money now. Let's talk about that too. Power and money. That's why. So when I talked about slavery in the beginning, that it was against the law that you could not educate slaves, children, and they couldn't read or write because it was control. Because the more that you know, then you can take over. And so this is still about control. It's control and power. They want to limit what you think. They don't want critical thinking. Critical. When I say critical thinking, and we ain't talking about critical race theory either.
Not that.
I went to liberal arts because liberal arts allows you to think. And that's what it is, and it gives you the freedom to think. And so they want to limit that. And so, but you know what? They're a little too late because the internet is out there.
Right. You can't edit that.
You can't.
No.
You just got to learn how to decipher.
Because your children went to University of TikTok. So please no.
All right.
I love it.
Let me see if I can get one call in real quickly before we move to the next topic. Nathan joins us from Suffolk. Hi, Nathan. You're on the air.
Hello, Barbara. How you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Yes, we are black all year long. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is Frederick Douglass speaking to us, y'all.
I just wanted to thank you so much. I'm actually on my way to Maryland, to Owens, Maryland, to a predominantly white school to present Frederick Douglass. So it is being taught in the schools. I just wanted to commend the panel for talking on both sides of the issue, what we are not getting in our schools, and personal responsibility. It has to be a complete conversation when we're talking, especially to our young children. I'm not going to quote Frederick Douglass. I'm going to quote Mark Twain. Don't let your schooling get in the way of your education.
That's right.
Amen.
That's right.
Thank you.
Amen.
Absolutely. They are restricting some things, some books in schools. But the thing about it, we got this little device in our pocket, which literally holds the entire knowledge of the world in your pocket. You can ask it how to find a Popeye's chicken sandwich, or you can ask it who is Harriet Tubman.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to relate that message to our children that although it's not in the school, you can go get it.
Yeah. Thank you, Nathan, for the call.
Thank
we really
you.
appreciate that so much. Well, ladies, I did not tell you about this topic that I want to bring up now because it had not happened when I had talked to you all about, how we get together and talk about what we're going to talk about on the air. But this week it happened. My 13-year-old granddaughter was called the N-word by one of her classmates. And she attends a private school in Baltimore. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what's happening.
Are you
because
still here?
because it's still the consequences and accountability are still being worked out and still being in progress. But something very interesting happened. So when my daughter found out what had happened, I mean, when she called me, I literally had to pull her off the ceiling. She was apoplectic. And she said something that I thought was really interesting, and I really want to get you all's reaction to it. I remained calm because, one, I've been through it before. Two, I've got wisdom, I think, and so I just handled it differently. My daughter became very angry with me, and she says, why aren't you screaming? Why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't you upset? And I was explaining to her what I just said, that I'm trying to think what is the best course we need to take, how do we need to handle this, and so forth. And she said, that's the problem. Not enough of us are screaming. And I wonder what your reaction, it struck me because I think we scream in different ways.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious in terms of, it's so infuriating that in 2023,
still happening.
and especially when we keep talking about, the first thing people will say all the time is, we've turned the corner. Especially look at our young people. They all get together. It's a rainbow, and everybody's and you want to believe that so badly.
So bad. So badly.
And it's happening.
It is happening. But the other thing is also
still
happening.
happening.
And that's the key. So let me go to my relationship expert first.
Well, first of all, I am glad that you are still in your right mind. In your right mind.
Right. Still here.
Right.
Only
And
after a lot of prayer.
And I didn't have to call any friends to come get you from someplace. Okay. So to your point about the fact that I think we all scream in different ways, I think that is so true, right? So you all know that I grew up in an exclusively white environment, right? So I was socialized that way in my earlier years, even though I was a child of immigrants. And so I lived in an America that was different than America inside of my home. And then I lived in a different one when I came out of my home, and then a different one in my Black community, and a different one in my white one. So I had to be all kinds of things, okay? And one of the things that I learned from having such intimate relationships with my white friends was they can't hear me when I'm emotional at all. And what was very interesting about that, which is really difficult for us, that we are not allowed to be three-dimensional individuals. We are not allowed to have our big Black feelings and still be effective sometimes.
And that you bring up such a good point, because by the time Tiffany had calmed down, then when she went into the meetings the next day, she did exactly what you're talking about.
She had to
shut down and be very factual. I just told her, just stick to the facts.
And you are on fire
and go from
on
there.
the inside.
Absolutely.
But you have to give water when you speak, and it's unfair. Let me be clear about it. It is 100% unfair. But I will tell you, if we don't figure out how to do some of the things the way that we're going to have to do them in order to get the outcomes we need, so that we can make room for those of us who are capable of being able to do it. It doesn't make us better, just those who are capable of being able to do it. We need to change things so that we can set our sisters and brothers free to scream however they need to. So there are unique dynamics that exist when you start coming across cultural lines, and what makes us go silent and what makes us go deaf and what makes us shout. It is different culturally. And even though we have 100% right to scream and feel and all of those things, I can tell you over and over again, in sitting in those rooms, the first thing that ends up happening is they see angry Black woman. And she had a right to be angry, and she should have been angry, and she wasn't even as angry as she deserved to be. But as soon as they do that math, everything that you're saying that's legitimate, somehow it's easy to just be like, you see how she is.
Dawn.
All of us here and listening, Black,
Been through it.
we walk in these worlds
Every day.
and we adapt in these worlds every day because we must.
Yep.
One, if we want to be heard, if
Yep.
we want to be successful, if we want to grow, if we want to change things,
Amen.
we go into all these worlds and we have to. But everybody else does not. And I am, as a great-grandmother, it just pains me that still a 13-year-old baby
Right. It's still.
in her school
Yep.
where your daughter is paying tuition, not even in a private school, because she wanted her to have what she felt was the best for her baby and she could provide it. And then I got to go deal with y'all, excuse me, because that's how I feel. But yes, I have to go in there with my head right.
Yep.
And with the facts
Yep.
Yeah.
and expectations that there will be consequences.
Absolutely.
And
And I
if
was
there-
very proud of her because she
Yes.
really thought about what she wanted to be the outcome, and that's what they're working on, and she didn't shy away from it. But
Right.
and she did, she had to temper herself. But it was just interesting, that dynamic between the two of us, because she's just like, I want you
had
to
to
scream.
But you know,
Why are you
but you
screaming
know,
like
I
me?
know.
But
you
I,
know-
I would like for somebody to develop a scream app.
So you know what?
Only because we can't go to the place and scream,
Right.
but we're still not capturing the data
Right.
of how often
We need to
we
scream.
need to
Oh,
Just,
scream.
just, just go to basement.
Amen.
So we don't.
Yes.
What's
The
that?
basement.
Go to the
Go to the
basement.
basement.
Okay. Yeah.
Dawn wants data.
But let me
I want data.
let me say this. I've been through this. My son was in private school from 2.5 all the way to 5th grade, and they try to write him off as being a bad kid. And I'll never forget when he was 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old. He was praying by the side of his bed, and he bursted out crying. And I'm like, honey, why are you crying? He said, the kids at school said I don't look nice. My skin is not the right color. My hair is not right or whatever. Oh, like you, I was crying. I still was crying.
I know,
went to the school. I took books, books for the classroom, books for the library. I sat down with the principal and the teacher. And the worst thing you could ever do is take a child out of a teacher's class. I have taken him out of classes of teachers. Out of many teachers' classes before to prove a point of that. And then I started taking him with me to the parent-teacher meetings so he know how to advocate for himself. And by the time he got in 5th grade, if he felt like he was being treated unfairly, he would say, I need to go home and check my mother's schedule because we need to meet. Okay? I put that right in him because he was always attacked by the kids. The teachers was treating him different. I finally put him in Jones from 6th grade on. 6th grade on up. He was, and then he finished at Hampton High. But he had those experiences, and he remembers those experiences to this day.
Oh, yeah, 'cause
but I taught him how to empower. I empowered him.
Well, one thing I will say about my granddaughter, one of those, is that she followed the protocol of the school. She went to her student advisory council, whatever they're called, and reported it and so forth. And so and I spent time with her reassuring her that she did nothing wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
And this whole thing was in response because she's the captain of the basketball team.
Right.
And she asked the student to do something, and that was their response. And so, it hurts.
Oh, it hurts. And even hearing you all talk about it hurts me now because I had those experiences as a child. And I remember my parents. Who would think that at my age, I'm hearing you all talk about this happening again? And I remember getting punished for something I said when I was walking down the street in a gym. Well, I use the word loosely. Gentleman said, nigger, nigger, nigger. And I turned around and said, asshole, asshole, asshole. And my uncle grabbed me. And he said, you can't say that. I said, but he said, no. And that night, my dad said, you want to live long enough to achieve your dreams. And right now, and here in the South, right now, that could have been a really dangerous situation. But as a child, you don't realize it's dangerous. I just realized thought
you
I
was
was
having
taking
an Emmett Till moment in a minute right there. Let me just share this one thing. I taught my son ever since he was 2 years old how to look a person in the eye and shake their hand. And so someone asked me, why did you do that? Because I wanted him to be fearless when meeting someone in terms of if someone was getting ready to kill him, I wanted him to be able to look him straight in the eye. And I taught him that. And when he meets you, he'll look straight in the eye.
So we got something from Joy in Loganville, Georgia, who must be listening to us online. Hey, she wants you all to talk about the effects of different ways we scream, how it affects our mental, emotional, and physical health.
Well, I would just say that some of us implode, some of us explode, right? So there was a piece that I was writing some years ago that's called "We Swallow Fire," and the experience of people of color in positions and navigating positions of power, whether we're in them and have to manage the expectations of our colleagues who very rarely look like us, or whether we are on the experiencing end of that power sometimes. And so for some of us, it is the implosion happens. It's the explosion that you hold, you sit on top of. And that one it's almost like the fire happens on the inside, but water or steam comes out instead. Where for others, it can be a full-blown scream. What matters more is that you give yourself the room to feel the fullness of the emotion unapologetically in safe spaces. Because every space is not safe to be able to fully express how you're feeling. You have to know where the safe spaces are, where you can be 100% what it is that you're feeling, and know that you can step from that space. And then after moments of calm or counsel to get you to calm, you're able to then engage in a productive manner. But we all have to have, for our mental health, we all have to have safe people and safe spaces in order to ensure that what's going on the inside doesn't have to live and die on the inside.
And I scream in my car. I scream in my office.
Yeah, I do too.
I scream at home.
Yeah, home is messed up.
And even from a societal perspective, when we take to the street, we're screaming, and in one perspective, where others may be working more silently behind the scenes, but they're also screaming.
Oh,
so it's not a one size emotional,
fits all.
right?
Yeah.
It just depends on how you want to handle it.
But you also need to
forward.
make sure that you are taking care of yourself with your
In the
scream,
process,
however
absolutely.
you scream, because you want to be able to come out of it and go, okay, got over this one, or I'm gonna work through this one a different way. Or, I'm getting ready to go in the meeting, and so I want to be this way. And you want to be able to hold it the whole time, whether you're talking with a boss or you're talking whatever.
Right.
So you want to get it out, get it right, get set. And I tell mamas all the time, and I say mamas, especially when they were coming to the school and they'd be all hyped up because, the child and called and said, teacher did this or so and so. It's like, Mama, it's always two sides to the story.
100% of the time.
Just don't go in.
Absolutely.
Wait, go in and listen first, and
Listen.
then
Just hear it out.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you need to think about it and come back, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but don't go in there that way because you won't get the outcome you're looking
That's exactly
for.
right.
By the way, it was Joyce from
Joyce.
Loganville, Georgia.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Joyce.
Joyce.
Thank you,
We're happy that you're listening to us. Absolutely.
And I love that Joyce brought in the mental health piece
Yeah.
connected
Yeah.
to that
Yeah.
because that's very real in terms of trauma and navigating the trauma that racism and systemic racism has on people of color every day. That just because you don't see our reactions doesn't mean that we're not experiencing it.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
And that's just
you know,
like,
it was interesting. Patients, the two children were brought together, with the head of school. So Patience was the only child of color in the room at that point, and so she said to me, "Grandma, I accepted the apology. There was an apology made. I accepted the apology because I felt I had to." And I mean, there's so many dynamics to what happens when this kind of thing happens.
100%.
Because you have to look at, you know, how the child is feeling. You know, who's advocating
On their behalf.
on both sides. Who's
Absolutely.
advocating? You know, who's there? Who has the stronger dynamic? You know, what's the dynamic in the room?
Right.
Who's leading that? I mean,
Right.
there's just so much to it, and
to me, in the school, they should have known better. They should have had another adult of color in the room. If there was another adult of color on the staff.
I was going to say, was there
you know, I mean,
another staff?
I think
There you go.
it's just such a dynamic that a lot of parents who want a strong, solid education for their kids, and you're torn. I mean,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
do you send them to a private school? You know, where you supposedly, because you're paying all this money, you're going to get, you know, this quality education. A lot of our school systems are struggling, but it depends on who's teaching.
It
And the only
happens
reason-
everywhere.
And the only reason why I put my
We
son
got
in
one
public
more
school because I
minute.
was
That's
raised
all.
through Catholic school, you know, up until 10th grade. And that's the reason why I put him in. Otherwise, he would have been in public school from the very beginning. I'm sorry. I just would have put him in.
wow.
Sometimes
Yeah.
as parents, we have to ask ourselves, are we trying to nurture their IQ or their EQ? And if emotional intelligence and social intelligence is what we are most interested in, sometimes they're not going to be at the top school. But they're going to have the most valuable social
That's right.
experience
That's right.
to
Which
ensure
make them a
that
better
they see
person.
themselves as
Yeah,
whole and
whole and-
enough. Because the world is going to make withdrawals. We have to ensure that we keep their accounts full.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for my
Thank
counseling
you.
lesson today, ladies.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing.
You.
You know, but you know, we do this show every month.
Yes,
we
we do.
talk about these issues, and you know, I think it's just so important that people who really think that things have turned around
Right.
and that life
No.
is rosy understand that, and it doesn't. And you know what? It doesn't just happen to poor
I was
people
going to
of
say
color.
that.
It happens to all of us.
All of us.
So
Right.
you know, next time you hear somebody saying, "Oh, but that's those people,"
Those people.
you don't have that problem.
Yeah.
We are
Yes,
those
we
people.
are.
We could have that
people.
conversation.
When you talk about
Look.
you, they talking about me.
I know we gotta go, but I hope that the parents of the children get together.
Yes, I do
because
too.
somebody taught that child.
Yeah,
to say,
that didn't
You
happen
got
by
that right.
accident.
So
Oh,
that
no.
gotta happen. too.
Indeed.
I'm done.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, ladies, so much, and thank you, audience, so much for believing in our program through your membership to WHRO and for showing up each week to listen to us. So you can catch this show again or share it with a friend by visiting anotherviewradio.org, where you can download the podcast. And remember to please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once a week reminder of upcoming shows. Don't forget, next week we will be live in Edenton, North Carolina. If you'd like to be a part of our live studio audience, go to whro.org/events and register there. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. Stay safe, be well, and hope to see you live from Edenton, North Carolina on the next Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.